Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. Because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there is no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service and you're ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to Aleashabahr.com. This episode is with Ethan Chazin. He's a New York business growth coach focusing on employee-first strategies and culture transformation that increase company profits. And I met Ethan and he's just really fun. And he's got some perspectives that are relieving to hear about the workplace as we go into the future. And honestly, the fear-based management, like you're lucky I gave you a job thing, isn't going to be what gets success and productivity from employees anymore. So I'm so excited to have you. Let's go. Welcome to the big show. Sales is not a dirty word.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, definitely. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. How long have you known that changing the employee culture so that people actually enjoy working somewhere makes a company more profitable?
So the short answer is 35 years. But according to my wife, I'm a slow learner. So it took me 20 in corporate America to figure out that if I wanted to implement change, I couldn't do it from within organizations. So in 2009, I left corporate America. My last day job, I headed up the marketing for the second or third largest cable company in the country. I was there a year. In my role, I grew their revenue 40%. My reward was I was laid off with about 10,000 other people. And I said, well, I'm not going to do this ever again. So I started my consulting practice. But I knew early on that power for organizational success, profitability, optimizing productivity, it's just, you have to start with employees. I knew it when I went into corporate America. I went through that for 20 years. And then in my consulting practice, I've worked with about 500 organizations on helping them to implement this focus on employees and transforming culture, right? To create a great place to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with the younger generations, I think like there was an accepted reality when our parents were working that you pick one company, you stay there till you die. And that was like success. And it doesn't matter how toxic and unpleasant it is, it's actually like normal for it to be toxic and unpleasant. Like they call it the whole saying, like they call it work for a reason. They
For a
don't call it
reason.
fun. Yeah. So everybody's like, oh, this is 80% of my life and I hate it, but I'm lucky to have a job. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't think Gen Z is going to put up with that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you're absolutely right. So you talk about the reconstitution of the workforce, right? You talk about 5 generations kind of having to work collaboratively. So you go all the way back to those folks who, the last great generation, the matures, the people born before World War II, and you go all the way up to the Gen Zs and even the alphas, because the alphas born on and after 2010 are now 14, 15, and they're going into some companies. But you talk about multiple generations having to work together. So you're starting with this idea that different values, different upbringing, different expectations about employee-employee relationship. Like you said, boomers and matures, and they're leaving, by the way, the workforce, tens of thousands every day, whether willingly or unwillingly, they're gone. So as you kind of think about who's filling into roles, like you said, it's Gen Zs and it's millennials. And they won't tolerate the same nonsense that organizations used to abide by, which was come in, shut up, head down, your ideas, your voice doesn't matter, get in before your boss, stay after she leaves, you're after your first year, maybe somebody will ask you your advice on something. Sorry, I'm the Gen Xer. We raised the Gen Zs. It's blame us. We're the helicopter generation. But Gen Zs in particular won't tolerate that. They have a whole different set of values. And by the way, I mean, I've taught over 2,000 of them in 15 colleges and universities. God bless Gen Zs. I
Yeah.
mean, how can we have done what we did to them? Remember, when they were little kids, they experienced 2007, 2008, the Great Recession,
Yeah.
where banks and financial services stole their parents' and grandparents' life savings. They foreclosed on their homes. And we expect Gen Zs to have that same old expectation work. If you're building an organization, if you're kind of figuring out who you want to bring in, you want to bring Gen Zs. You just need to figure out how to do it. But I'm a big fan of accentuating what they bring to the table and understanding when you hire them, they don't come ready-made. They
Okay.
don't. They just don't. The technology skills, the social media skills, the branding, the online digital, they ace that exam. They have the attention span and the communication skills of like watching paint dry. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like that's also a parenting thing, like because I don't think that maybe at the beginning people knew how damaging it was to have a screen in front of your face all the time, which has kind of contributed to that issue. But they have really powerful skills to your point, and I think what a lot of people get nervous about when you talk about employee first strategies and bringing kids in who aren't, like I'm grateful I have a job. Thank you so much. Let me work overtime for no pay to prove myself and earn my stripes and whatever is the idea is that they're entitled and they're lazy. But I don't think that that's the case. It's just that they need to be motivated differently and they are really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, look, that gets back to, and your intro was phenomenal, and thank you. That gets the whole heart of the matter of building a great place to work means you automatically don't have to. And I'm sick and tired of hearing business owners say, well, there's a war on talent. Bullshit. There's no war
There's
on
a what?
talent. A
War on
war on talent? A
I've never
what?
heard that. What does it
Yeah, I
mean?
know, right? A what? No, there actually isn't. If you go to places like Patagonia, Chobani, Kind, Honesty, I mean, organizations that are built around value constructs and a sense of purpose and vision, mission, and they have strong core values, guess what? Your best employees are coming there because it resonates with them. Conversely, if you have a toxic workplace culture, you have a horrible reputational brand, and there's no hiding. There's no hiding anymore. There's so many organizations, thank God, that are starting to focus on the culture of the organization um, that you can't hide. Whether it's Ethisphere, Great Place to Work. I mean, all these organizations are focusing on these, annual lists of great places. I've been doing this in my practice for 16 years. This is not a surprise. You have a great reputational brand. You treat your people incredibly well. By the way, it's also the responsibility of business owners and entrepreneurs who are building new companies. You need to completely stop doing that traditional talent acquisition the way it was done in the 20th century. You have a job description. That stuff is dead. Your job with these Gen Zs, they're sharp. Teach them on the job. But you have to look for different skills. You have to do it in your interviewing process. Look for people who are problem solvers, critical thinkers, intrinsically motivated. They work well together, they work well independently, but they also can demonstrate volunteer work, gap year, cultural diversity, a whole different set of skills and behaviors that you want to bring into your organization. And there's a reason British Petroleum feels different than Patagonia.
Yeah, like the impression that I'm getting is that Gen Z and what I've heard, and it resonates with me, has inherited like a bag of shit. And they're like, oh, the world is kind of, broken. And I'm not going to just prioritize money like all the
Mhm.
generations before. Like, I want to be
Yep.
part of something that is making the world a better place. And if I'm passionate about that, I'm going to show up 150% for it.
It's impossible to go out and recruit them if you don't have an established essence of what's your purpose. And this kind of gets back to, for our listening audience, what you were asking me about before we went live, which is there's a war going on in terms of corporate America with these two opposite sides. When you ask, what's the purpose of business? Like if you ask, look, I can't tell you, I've started asking this now over the last 6 months or so, every time I talk to somebody. And interestingly enough, 99% of the people say it's profit maximization, right? We exist to generate profit. And that is a dead mindset from the 20th century, industrial revolution, manufacturing, that whole Peter Drucker mind drain. But organizations now are taking different approaches, which appeals, like you said, to the Gen Zs. What's our legacy? What do we stand for? What kind of societal impact? Environmentalism, causes, and not just the BS of social corporate responsibility, but what do we stand for? And everybody assumes, and I said to you, I found in my practice falsely that you got to pick or choose, right? It's a war, so you got to be on one of two sides. Actually, I said that entire framework doesn't exist. Right now, thank God, after 16 years of me working on this and trying to be the tip of the spear to influence this change, people are realizing that they both are actually the same. If I create a great organization from day one, I have great values, I know what my legacy is, I know what I want to ultimately stand for. I can start looking for people who share that. I mean, Seth Godin called it tribes. It's the people who resonate, Gen Zs to boomers and matures, who buy into what I stand for and they want to come work for something, like you said, it's worthy, it's exciting. Because that pursuit of profit, if that's what you're building out in your business, God bless you. You want to be a private equity firm or a hedge fund or a financial services fund, do you? But that's not the future of business anymore. We're going back to before 50 years ago, before those Peter Drucker models. I don't know if you know, but companies weren't allowed to become companies unless they clearly defined what the values, what they wanted to leave on impact. That was the way you started a business before we shifted in the 1970s, 1980s.
Well, I know also, the idea of shareholders was to give people a voice in their companies, so that companies didn't, do things
Mhm.
that weren't in the public's best interest. And that has taken on a totally just profit driven life of its own. Especially like I went down a rabbit hole with like BlackRock and stuff, and it was like really creepy that these hedge funds actually own the majority in all the companies. So there's no
Mhm.
competition or voice being heard. Like we don't buy stock the same way. We used to say, oh, we'll buy it in this company, we'll buy it in that company. And now we buy it in this like our IRAs or whatever that are like all these companies. You don't even know what's in your IRA.
Yep. And I'll give you an example as the backlash to that. So two great examples, right, are this notion of diversity, equity, inclusion. So ostensibly, people who are for it believe that it was a great way to level the playing field from historically groups of individuals who were anybody who's not a white male passed over, right? So it was a way to speed up the kind of leveling. And so what we're seeing right now, McDonald's, Meta, Lowe's, Harley Davidson, the list goes on of these big corporations who are saying, no, 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 we no longer are going to do any DE&I initiatives. We're getting rid of all of that because they're facing pressure from the right. So Donald J. Trump comes into office with his 13 billionaires in his administration. The first thing he's done in 3 days is say anybody in the federal government who does DE&I, literally the precursor legal first step to firing all of them is to put them on paid leave. They're going to be gone. That's what corporate America is doing. So you think Gen Zs and millennials are going to stand for that?
No.
Absolutely not. They're not going, and they're not going to come work for you. And your reputational brand is going to make it harder for you to get top talent.
Well,
That's what's going on. I mean, literally, I do videos on it all the time.
and also, I've heard of the CEO who pays the lowest salary in his company is $70,000. And he has an absolute deluge of applicants, to your point. And
Mhm.
he has made, like, he cut his salary initially to afford everyone having this type of salary. And now he makes way more money because everyone wants to work there and everyone wants to stay there. Like they don't want to leave. Yeah.
It's so what you're saying is, again, the way to control people historically was this thing called management. And so you built this pyramid command control structure from the 20th century, which was lots of layers of bureaucracy, a few blessed people at the top.
Yeah.
And then you have all these things called middle management. And then you have that human detritus called client facing staff at the bottom of the pyramid. And
Yeah.
the whole model is predicated on the middle layers being there to block out above and below, to funnel communication up and down, and to retain power up there by controlling below. And
Yeah.
what you're seeing now is these companies that are flat, like you said, or matrix, very few levels of reporting, the senior and the junior people very close. And instead of functions like HR, marketing, sales, they're all based on, collaborative, self-directed teams. And that's Wegmans and Nucor Steel, and that's Trader Joe's. I mean, the most successful organizations in the world are built around this new 21st century novel idea of you run your organization out of purpose and you profit. You and I talked about this last time. I spent 10 years researching this. It's in my second book, The Compassionate Organization. I mean, I looked over a decade at over 200 countries and over 7,000 companies. And I found that the one characteristic every company shared, who was either number one or number two in terms of top financial performance in their industry, they all had one characteristic, and it was amazing workplace culture. And that's where we're going. So if you run a business, if you're starting a business, if you're listening to this and wondering, how do I maximize sales and how do I become profitable? The answer is in front of you. The question is if you care enough to seize it. It's think about your employees first. Take care of your people. And some business owners tell me, well, my clients this or my customers that. No, your clients and customers have no thought process in this equation, because if you find the best, you hire the best, and you treat them the best, they're going to go out of their way to take care of your customers. It's the whole Tony Hsieh Zappos model.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a concern for people a lot of times when they're hearing this is, I don't know how to do this. Like, what if employees just take advantage of me? Like, I can't just offer them the world and, not have like, I'm sure the answer is like, you need certain KPIs in place. You need certain buy-ins in place. Like, you can't just say that you're going to do that and then lead from a place of fear and scarcity that you're doing it. Like, oh my God, you're going to take advantage. Like, how can people envision doing this in a way that, feels realistic?
Yeah, I mean, God bless. That's the number one pushback I get. And I start out with delivering the medicine through tough love. They always talk about the business owners, the entrepreneurs, the people who are in positions of authority, right? It's exactly what you said. I don't know that I can trust my employees. I'm like, well, think about what you just said for a minute. How damaging and toxic of a statement is that about you and your supposed leadership team, that you've brought people into your organization that you fundamentally do not trust to be grown-ups and to be self-motivated, autonomous, independent. So that aside, where do you get going on this? The first thing I do I have this proprietary 18-question workforce vitality survey. I go in and I do a 360 view of the stakeholder population. I never talk to the owner. I never talk to the leadership team because they have no clue what's going on. I will go in and I will survey. I start with employees, all employees, other than the senior leadership team. I next talk to a select few of their clients, both current and walked away. I talk to their suppliers, vendors, contractors. I get a 360 holistic view of what people are feeling about the organization. And then I go back to the leadership team and I say, here's the deal. You're so out of touch that you thought your culture, and then they describe aspirationally what they believe it is. We call that the formal culture. That's delusional. And then I'll go over here and I'll say, this is what everybody who interacts with your organization is saying. This is what it feels like for your people to be there. This is the informal culture. Let me help you reconcile the two. And typically the things that we can do, the low-hanging fruit, Aleasha, it doesn't cost a lot. It's easy to implement. It just takes this thing that people are really struggling with right now, visionary leadership. You have to be receptive to the idea that you can't control employees. You you don't have the same opportunities. It's what you said before. You can't start a business nowadays and run it as if you're in the 20th century. That doesn't fly. The people are different. The market's different. I still have business owners who say, is it okay if I tell all my employees that they have to come into the office?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I think it's like,
What?
what is the purpose of
What?
what is the purpose of it? Like, because you don't trust, because they're not being productive at home. Like, if they're not
In
productive,
other words, you don't trust them to be
right.
productive on their own.
Well, and I think there are KPIs to make sure that someone is productive or not. And I've always been of the mindset like, what I am fast. Okay. I'm a efficient person. And it was really irritating to me when I was an employee that I had to be somewhere until a certain time, even though all my work was done, just because you were supposed to be there. Like the whole idea of it was just, and I've always, as an employer, been like, I don't really care when you're doing it, as long as it gets done by the time it needs to get done and it gets done well. Like, why do I care?
Exactly. And so here's the thing, which, like anything else, this is from my consulting practice and the work I do day in and day out. It's poker, it's a tell. When somebody says, I need all my people to come in, or I want my people to stay, if you just think about what we were talking about before, Gen Zs as different, and your workforce is comprised of this wonderful milieu of all these different people, they're fundamentally unique. You make a blanket statement, I want all my people to do such and such. You have completely dehumanized the entire structure of your organization. So you saying one size fits all HR, one size fits all expectations. And the truth of the matter is, I use my daughter. We were talking before about my family situation. My daughter is 24. She graduated from Cornell. She went through the end of high school and college in COVID. So she's borderline introverted. She needed, when she graduated, to come into an office workplace environment to learn from water cooler, to watch how people interacted, to learn the culture. And she was literally shipped the laptop and said, Vaya con Dios, don't come in. It doesn't work well to say one size fits all. And the reason you do that is you don't have to get to know each employee. You don't have to know her, his, or their wants, needs, desires, fears, expectations. And the way you asked me before, what do you do to change this culture mindset? You literally say, from starting tomorrow, we're going to address each employee differently. You know what that requires?
Time.
Talking to them.
Yeah.
Talking to them. Talking to them. And by the way, literally, if you're doing it when they're employed there, the train pulled out of the station and you missed your stop, because this should have been part of the interview process. That's why we call it behavioral interviewing. It should have been part of the onboarding where you assign a coach or mentor day one. It's easy stuff that needs to happen. If for no other reason, you can't do it for altruistic reasons. The most successful, financially top performing organizations have already gone down this road. I mean, there are examples everywhere. I mean, I interviewed the son of the founder of Morningstar, not the ratings company, but the tomato company in Southern California, pushing 50 years of constant quarterly financial increases. They've never had a down quarter in nearly 50 years. They have no job titles at Morningstar. There are 500 full-time employees, 1,500 seasonal. And when you get hired into the company, literally, you have somebody who's a more seasoned employee who literally walks you around and introduces you to the people you're going to work with and job share with. And then from day two, you're off on your own and you get all the resources and help you need. Imagine if every organization were run that way. But it's scary because you don't know how to implement if you're willing to do it. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
And especially salespeople. I mean,
oh my God, don't even get me started. Like,
well, I will, because you and I have talked so much about this, and we both share a lot of experience. I mean, I was supporting them in 20 years in corporate in marketing roles. And I mean, the only reason I know how to sell now is because I watched people who do it really well and people who don't do it well.
Mm-hmm.
But that requires people to break down those silos, those Chinese firewalls between functions, and actually partner together. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm in marketing, my sales team should be my customers.
Totally. So, yeah, I mean, the siloed approach, the fact that they're like pitted against each other, sales is the only job where they're like, okay, we're gonna hire four people and expect one to stay, and you get no direction. Um, like imagine hiring an HR or ops manager and being like, we're not gonna tell you how to do anything. Figure it out, and if you don't, you're fired. Like,
Uh-huh.
how is that a recipe for success? They have like sales culture has so far to go. And then like, promoting the top salesperson as a manager, which is a completely different skill set is needed for that. Um,
Yep.
and they become miserable because they're not making money and selling and they're not and their like reports aren't selling because they only know how to sell one way. They're not a person management is a different skill set. Like
Yep.
it's very, very broken. So I love everything you're saying. I love that you're making it approachable and realistic and focusing on the thing that everybody, chooses to justify it, which is profits. It increases profits. So why wouldn't you?
And here's the answer to that, which is you basically put the softball on the tee for me, so thank you. The answer is, and I know it was rhetorical, the answer to your question, which is I face it all day long, every day, is you know what, I hear what you're saying and it kind of makes sense, but I don't know how to measure the return on my people, or it sounds like a nice to have. Here's the deal. There are no more excuses. It used to be in the 70s, and my background, I started my college degree, my MBA was in advertising marketing. And the saying used to be half my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half.
Right.
Nowadays, the same statement is true about their people, businesses, workforce.
Yes.
I know half of my payroll is wasted. I just don't know how to measure my employee ROI. Um, so here's the deal. You can measure it. Over 16 years, I've developed the process, but the end result is that's measuring the financial performance is great, but we now have 40 to 50 years of data that says, without a question of a doubt, the way to measure companies' success financially is to not look at financials. Financials are an end result. They're a lagging indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what your people are saying about I'm respected. I have control over my work. It's that Daniel Pink 4 questions. Do I have control over when I work, where I work from, who I work with, and what I work on? The people who are top talent and you give them like all the tools and everything they need, and you create an environment that facilitates that kind of shared sense of mission, the financial performance is the logical outcome. And it's no longer safe to say, I don't know if this works, because you got 40 or 50 years of data. I had a guy come on my podcast. So he started a company called B Lab, and then he's now a partner at Irrational Capital. Irrational Capital has developed this human capital factor. And so they have 10,000 companies who have gone through certification using data that shows you have a great place to work. It's not financial data. It's, are my employees happy? Are they fulfilled? Do they have control over their work? Do they have access to all the resources? I mean, you go through, and the thing is, they have an Irrational Capital, 750 million data points. If you're a small business owner, you can literally go on a website and see what's great place to work, Ethisphere. You just go on and you say, okay, these are my competitors. They're there. We're not there. Why are they? Oh, because they're a great place to work. They're getting all the top talent. We have this like rotating carousel of salespeople or employees. It's so obvious to me now. It hurts when business owners make up excuses, because that's what they are. The last thing I would say is, here's how I know if I'm doing a conversation with somebody, I can't work with her or him. It's so easy. It's painful. If she says something along the lines of my people, I literally should get up and start walking away. She said, well, they're like, wait, what are you doing? We just started. I'm like, no, we can't work together. They're not your people. You're blessed to be able to have them make a commitment to you. And that's not words, it's not semantics. The other thing is if somebody says to me, our employees are our greatest asset, I'm done. Do you know how Gandhi said it? It's beneath human dignity to treat people like they're a cog on a wheel. People are not assets. An asset is a freaking accounting term. You know, you drive the car off the dealership lot, it depreciates in half. You think about that mindset, that's why you don't, on a balance sheet, income statement, or cash flows, there's not a single
Mm,
place you can look for employee contribution because it doesn't exist. We're still stuck in the how do you measure things with financial numbers? You don't measure people by financial numbers.
hmm.
And I've spent 16 years doing this. It's easy for me, but business owners are still falling back on the excuses. Gen Zs are this, they're not that. There's a war on talent. I have supply chain issues. I have this issue with vendors. Excuse, 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 excuse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any company that wants to scale has to have employees. And I think of employees as your literal legs. They're the legs you stand on. If you don't have good legs, your company's going to fall. And you want to take care of your legs.
Well, I mean, I'm at the age where everything's failing. But here's the thing. You and I also have talked about this, and I don't understand why more business people don't understand it, except it's just kind of blinders. You have three levers you can pull to increase the successful performance of your business. You've got your strategy. Let's play this game. If you have a great strategy and awful people, you're doomed. The second level is operational efficiency. So here's the thing. Every startup, entrepreneur, small business has an EOS integrator implementer. They all can go on ChatGPT. They all know technology is no longer the differentiator, it's the lowest common denominator. So if you
Mm.
don't have operational efficiency, you don't have strategy, you're left with people. And I have been saying this for 35 years. When you asked me before, I've been saying for 35 years, your people are your only lasting competitive advantage. It's my challenge when companies bring me in to help them unleash their people's untapped potential. Higher performance, higher productivity, hello, equals higher financial success. There's no ambiguity. It's a straight line. It's cause and effect.
All right, well, that is a good stopping point for us. And so we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. And I hope that you enjoyed it as much as me and are as excited for the future as I am. Thanks again to Ethan for making an appearance as our guest today. And can you tell everyone how they could find out more about you and how they could work with you?
Oh, Austin, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on this show and talking to your people. I love this. And so if anybody's interested in having a conversation where there's potential in your organization, just email me, Ethan at the Chazin, Chazin group.com, or go to my website, thechazingroup.com, and let's start a conversation.
Okay, wonderful, you guys. I would especially if you are just creating your company or it's just starting to take off, that's a really important time to bring Ethan in.
The
So,
most important decision you make is employee number two.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that shows how you're starting to think about culture and great workplace and lasting competitive advantage from day one.
Well, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this or found it valuable, please like, share, subscribe. Those little actions mean so much. And until next time.